Welcome to the Type Tune Tint Podcast. I'm Tom Kranz.
Traveling down the turnpike, heading for the shore. A thought just then occurred to me I never thought before. I've been a lot of places, seen pictures of the rest. But of all the places I can't think of, I like Jersey best.
New Jersey takes its share of hits in the media and cultural arts, but it's a state rich in history, including history that's being made today. At the intersection of New Jersey's past and present is Fred Rossi, a career journalist who, amazingly, has worked at the same local newspaper for 23 years. As a lifelong history buff and New Jersey native with great writing chops, he put all those qualities to work to write the book Jersey Stories. Fred joins me today.
You can have Miami, I love the Garden State. I've been a lot of places, seen pictures of the rest. But of all the places I can think of, I like Jersey best.
And Fred Rossi joins me now from his palatial estate in Scotch Plains, New Jersey. Fred, how are you today?
Very good, Tom.
Good. So Fred and I tend to run into each other in places in and around this part of New Jersey, Fanwood and Scotch Plains. Fred has been a journalist for many years at our local weekly newspaper that recently changed hands and changed names. And I kind of do the same thing for our town, so we sometimes show up at the same events. But a couple of years ago, Fred wrote a book, which we're going to get to shortly, Jersey Stories, which is really great. I mean, even if you're not a New Jersey person, there's history in here that you probably never knew is ascribed to New Jersey, and damn it, you should know that, all right? So, but Fred, first, tell me a little bit about your background. Did you grow up as a journalist? Did you go to school for that, or did you go to school for tool and die making?
I grew up in New Jersey, born and raised here. I grew up down the shore, mostly in Ocean Township, just next to Asbury Park. Spent most of the 1980s in and out of college in Washington and Virginia, Northern Virginia, pursuing a political science degree. And for about 3 of those years, I dropped out and worked at a newsletter publisher down in Arlington, Virginia, which kind of lit the spark for being, in the journalism field in general. And by the time I went back to college to get my degree, it's like too late to change majors. So I just kind of wrote out the political science degree field and then got my degree and came back to New Jersey immediately. And decided to give journalism a whirl, even though I had never really written anything except a couple of writing courses in college. And my very first journalism job was in Fanwood at the now departed Whitaker newsletters, owned by Joel Whitaker, or I think you might know him.
Yeah, he was on their council when I first got
here. Yeah, he was on the council for a little while, but I worked for him starting in 1988 and wrote some business newsletters for him for several years. And then left there, went to a consulting firm in Linden and wrote a newsletter right as the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe were being liberated. And it was basically a newsletter about business opportunities for U.S. companies over there. And the sources were impossible to find. It was a very hard one to write because there was nothing out there. There was no information. So I was there for about 5-6 years. And then I was walking downtown Westfield one afternoon in the fall of 1998, and I walked past the Westfield Leader office and I'm like, let me just pop in here and see if they need any help. And I never looked back.
And the rest is history. You've been there for
beat about a month later, and 23 and a half years.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you've been in
a 6-month stint, but it's turned into one of the most fun experiences of my life.
Wow. So the Westfield Leader at the time served mostly Westfield, New Jersey, but then there was a second version that was much of the paper was the same except the front page, which was the Scotch Plains, the Times of Scotch Plains Fanwood, and your work showed up in both of those papers.
Yeah. So I started covering the council there in December of 98, and then gradually added on the planning and zoning boards to my beat, and then anything except the Board of Education I cover basically now. So
right. So after 23 years, I think it's fairly common knowledge at this point that the local newspaper business has really changed. not for the better, I think, for people looking for news. What's it done? What's your take on that, and how has it affected you specifically, and what you're covering, and how often, that kind of stuff?
Well, yeah, I mean, just thinking back when I started, it was our paper, the Record Press, which was another local paper. The Suburban News was pretty active in Scotch Plains still. I remember seeing their reporter at some of the meetings early on. And now it's basically me, and then you have the TAP online paper, which covers. It's not as, it's more of a community newspaper with not as much hard news as ours tends to have. Lots of pictures and lots of announcements of events and things like that. So, I mean, I basically think I'm the only game in town if you want to know what's going on in town. Town government anyway, and elections and all that.
So you still cover government, and you cover still hard news, as it were.
It's all I do. Yeah, I cover the council regularly and the planning and zoning boards. I cover the elections. I cover all the downtown redevelopment stuff that's underway. I don't cover the Board of Ed, but I cover anything else and feature stories and all that stuff. But
I've been a news consumer my entire life, and I'm going to tell you that you're like a hero, because how many people are there like you, in any places? I know, John Mooney, who publishes the Tap Into, which you've mentioned, and that's our local online publication here. Yeah. John's great, and John is a journalist and he's a writer, but John is the owner. He also does sales, and he covers government. He covers football games, and traffic he takes accidents. The pictures, right? Yeah. And he does all of that. So he can't possibly be in a million places at once.
Oh, I know.
You, of course.
He's got my admiration, and I truly, like I said, it's been the funnest experience. Just getting to meet dozens and hundreds of great people in Scotch Plains, and as well as Fanwood and Westfield, and making a lot of friends. And over the years, every year at the end of the year, I thought, well, maybe I'll hang it up this year, and then I'm like, no, I want to see what happens next year.
What else are you going to do?
Election coming up, or some other things are coming up, so I want to stick around and see what happens. So
good for you.
I'm here till I'm 90.
That's good, and I'll keep reading the newspaper. Used to be The Leader, is now called the Hawk of Union County. It was sold a couple of years ago, and they now cover, what is it, 7 different communities, something like that.
Yeah, we expanded into Clark, and I think Summit too.
Yeah, Garwood, I think. And they cover
Cranford.
A lot of different towns. So I'm finding that Fanwood's not getting in the paper as often as it used to. And I think that the editor is trying very hard to stick to as much harder news as she can, and I think suddenly you're covering 7 towns. You have to be
and we're shorthanded too. I mean, sometimes I'll attend a Fanwood meeting if I am free, but it's very hard to get reporters. I mean, people who know how to write too. It's tough.
Sure. So have you always been a history buff? I mean, we're going to talk about Jersey Stories now, which is your book. It's the name of your book. It's exactly what it says. For those of you who are out there, you first of all, you need to buy this book right away. If you live in New Jersey, for sure. But if you don't, you need to find out about the first person to vote, the first Black man to vote after the 15th Amendment was passed, the person who was almost the president of the United States, but not quite, Mr. Hobart. Were you always interested in history, or did you just...
For as long as I can remember, probably. I mean, I remember being 10 years old and waking up in the morning and riding my bike to the Krauser's convenience store by my house to get the newspaper and reading. Read the sports section probably for the first year or two, and then I slowly expanded. But I think 1976 is when I really became a news and history addict with the presidential campaign, and then I got into it. So yeah.
So this book is packed with these great stories. And you've got like 10 pages of citations and sources. How long did it take you to gather all this? Or was this book just a kind of an extension of what you've been doing, kind of as a hobby all your life?
Well, actually, about 2010 or so, I had this idea for a wall calendar for about 10 or 15 years, like a New Jersey wall calendar with every date on the calendar every month, with a little, this on this date in New Jersey history, this happened, just a little sentence. So-and-so was born, or the Hindenburg blew up, or blah, blah, blah. But I never did it. I just collected these bits and pieces of information, date information over the years. I had, 10, 15 years, I had it on a piece of paper. And then finally about 2010, I decided, all right, let me see if I can do this calendar. And I assembled all this stuff and I filled in all the dates that I hadn't filled in yet. And I published it in 2011 and 2012. And it was fun and it was great, but the sales were tough and it was very expensive to get it printed in color and then advertised for it. So it was just a 2-year lark and I forgot about it. And about 3 years ago, I guess now, June of 2019, I was working on some other independent writing stuff, a short story I was working on and a screenplay. And I ran into writer's block on both of them and I was frustrated. And then a light bulb went off in my head. I'm like, oh, wait, let me dig that calendar out. I'm going to write a book just out of the blue. And I started about this time in June of 2019 and 24/7. It was just on my mind. I thought about it in my sleep.
Really? So you just you banged it out all at once, basically?
Yeah, I did. I went to the calendar and wrote down about 20 entries that I thought could be researched into full chapters. And I just spent every day researching and writing the first draft. It took about 4 months to write the whole book, research and write the first draft. And then, my sister read it for me. I read it and reread it several times. I took pictures, I laid it out and proofread it. My main objective was not to embarrass myself.
Oh, of course.
So, I don't want people, reading it and snickering behind my back. So I was very careful not to, make it a half.
This started as your calendar, which kind of was like an outline, and then you just kind of flushed out the stories that you liked.
Yeah, I mean, for the one about the Garrett Hobart from Patterson, I think on a calendar, I had his birthday, or something like, just some reference to him. So I just went on the internet and found a biography that was written about him after he died. I read a memoir that his widow wrote 30 years after his death. I found, millions of newspaper clippings from, the time he was a New Jersey politician up until Washington and his death. And, and that's what it was. I just wrote everything in longhand, all the notes, and then just put them all together for each chapter, one at a time.
Very cool. So I reviewed your book when it first came out a couple of years ago, and I'm going to read about since you brought up Garrett Hobart. I just love this guy's story. And I wrote, my favorite story is Hobart's, who by every account was an honorable, honest, affable, humble, reluctant politician who treated the office of vice president with respect and shunned the trappings of privilege. He's credited with elevating the office to more than just an afterthought of history. Fred Rossi tells his story with detail and a certain amount of affection, a kind of homage to an individual who, if not for his premature death to illness, may well have been the 26th president of the United States instead of Teddy Roosevelt. What I loved about this guy is that the whole idea that you can be, a high-profile politician and be honorable, honest, affable, humble, and a reluctant politician. I love that. And don't we really need that now,
And to be liked and respected by both parties too, immensely. In Trenton and Washington, he was, everyone liked him, not just because he was a nice guy, but because he was honorable and, honest and decent. So
now you also have, somebody in your distant past who is a figure in history. Tell us about Nathaniel.
Yeah, back right before the Revolutionary War, the King of England appointed Ben Franklin's son, who was a Tory, as the royal governor of New Jersey. Obviously, Father Ben was fighting for independence, and his son William Franklin was siding with the king. The royal governor's mansion was in Perth Amboy, and it's still standing there. It's a proprietary house. It's a few blocks in from the waterfront, and so in the 1776, the rebels in New Jersey finally had enough of him, and they declared him an enemy to the people. And they ordered a guy named Colonel Nathaniel Hurd, who was a militia leader, to go to Perth Amboy, arrest him, and remove him from power. And this was in mid-June of 1776. So after a couple of days of negotiation, they pulled him out of the proprietary house and brought him down to Burlington, where the other state capital was at the time, and he was done. And that was the story. The footnote to it is Nathaniel Hurd went on to be a brigadier general in the Revolutionary War. He lived in Woodbridge, and He died in, I guess, the late 1794 or 1792. I think his great granddaughter in the 1800s and mid 1800s married my great grandfather. And so I'm Nathaniel Hurd's great grandson.
How'd you find that out?
I heard that all my life. My father,
Is that right?
My father and my aunt, my parents told me this. We're related to some Revolutionary War guy, and I heard the name. I knew the very vague outlines of the story, but once I started researching it, I found out more about him. William Franklin as well. Went to his gravesite in Woodbridge at the Presbyterian Church. So it was very neat to confirm that I wasn't being lied to all these years.
Yeah, no kidding. Wow, that's really cool. Do you have any other books in the works?
At the moment, no. I'm thinking about doing another one, maybe kind of the same theme as the Jersey Stories book, maybe with new stories or whatever. But I need a big dose of time and confidence and get to itism, so I can.
Well, you must have the confidence by now. I know time is always an issue, especially when you have a day job, as we like to say.
Yeah.
But I don't know that you have anything else to prove. This book is great. I found it interesting. And, I'm a reluctant New Jersey transplant. I'm from Philadelphia. I moved up here in 1994 because I got a job in New York, and Fanwood was as close as I could get to New York and, afford a house, basically.
Yeah.
So, I certainly had heard all the kind of, the stuff that people laugh at New Jersey about, mobs and corruption and all that stuff. But there's nothing wrong with learning about actual history about New Jersey. You should try it sometime. And this book is a great place to start. How can we buy your book, Fred?
I am selling it out of my house right now. You can email me. I have an email address, and then I can send you links to pay via Venmo or PayPal or Zelle. And my email address is jerseystoriesnj@gmail.com. So it's JERSEYSTORIESNJ. So jerseystoriesnj@gmail.com.
And you have a Facebook page also for the book, don't you?
Yeah. I think it's Jersey_stories.
So if they search Jersey Stories or Jersey_stories, they'll find it.
Yeah, for sure.
Fred, I really appreciate it. And again, I really love your stories. I wish you nothing but success. I'll see you on the road, I guess. And
I'll race you to the next book completion.
Exactly.
I think you'll win.
Keep on telling the stories of our community in the newspaper.
I appreciate it. Thanks. I certainly will.
You bet. All right, we'll talk soon.
Thanks, Tom.
But of all the places I can't think of, I like Jersey best.
Hi, folks. Tom Krantz here. I appreciate you tuning in to my podcast, Type Tune Tint, and I especially appreciate those of you who have subscribed. I started this subscriber thing in July of 2024, really just as a way of recouping a little bit of the costs of doing this podcast. There's website hosting, and there's WordPress additions, and occasionally I buy a book so that I can actually know what I'm talking about when I interview an author. You can subscribe to this podcast for as little as $3 a month. Comes off your credit card automatically, and for $3 a month, you get the satisfaction of knowing that you're helping keep this podcast going. I'm in my 5th year now, but also I will occasionally offer exclusive content just for subscribers. So give it a shot. I appreciate you taking the plunge. You can unsubscribe anytime you want. If you have any questions or comments, of course, you know how to get in touch. So please subscribe, and I appreciate it. Thanks.